everyone. I am Frilin Torino Nara, and I am here to talk about current approaches to intercultural education and language teaching. Lidicode and Scarino suggest that in intercultural language education, language learning is fundamentally engagement in intercultural communication, and that the addition of a new language to a person's linguistic repertoire positions that person differently in relation to the world in which they live. So this is not actually an especially controversial or new perspective because culture has always been a part of language teaching. And according to an updated 2018 version of the highly influential Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or the CEFR, the intercultural language education is an integration of culture, language, and the intercultural in many current language policy documents. So they also coined pluricultural competence, which makes multiple references to culture and intercultural dimensions. So in the next slides, we will explore how intercultural language education is practiced in different regions. So first off is in the United States of America. So the standards for foreign language in the 21st century and the Modern Language Association, or the MLA, they make extensive references to culture, the relationship between culture, language, and communities, as well as intercultural communication. In Asian settings, however, take for instance in China, the Chinese National English Curriculum contains a section on cultural awareness. This is according to the Ministry of Education 2011. And in Thailand, according to the Office of the Basic Education Commission, under which is one learning area of foreign languages, language and culture is one of the 4 basic strands of the basic education core curriculum. So this is alongside with other 3 strands, which are language for communication, language and relationship with other learning areas, and language and relationship with the community and the world. In Japan, on the other hand, their Japanese national language policy highlights the difference between essentialized Japanese and foreign languages and cultures in primary and secondary English education rather than on intercultural communication. So all in all, however, we can say that the cultural and intercultural aspects are increasingly recognized at the policy level globally. Unfortunately, however, there are studies that have shown negative aspects on the intercultural language education. First, teaching practices have been identified as failing to incorporate culture and intercultural communication either systematically or in depth. This is not surprising given the lack of clear guidance in policy or support from materials. Second, the intercultural or transcultural communication and global Englishes are typically not part of teacher education and training and are rarely part of the test that teachers are expected to prepare students for. And third, the already busy teachers less prioritize teaching culture and intercultural communication. Fourth is on the lack of guidance on uptake and applicability, which means that it is not always clear to teachers how to integrate these into classroom practices. And fifth, among the other skills like reading, writing, speaking, and listening, the fifth skill, which is the intercultural communication, is usually the marginalized. So, we can conclude that the intercultural aspects of communication through global Englishes are crucial to successful interactions and cannot be ignored or bolted on as marginal extra into change. Despite the difficulties in meaningfully incorporating intercultural or transcultural communication in language education and English language teaching specifically, there are approaches that can be adopted, and we will explore some of these in the following section with Miss Ana Lucy Ronquillo. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Ana Lucy Ronquillo, and I'm going to continue the topic on intercultural education and global Englishes. We have here 15.2, which is about intercultural education, global Englishes, and ELT. Here in this section, we move away from a sole focus on the national scale and consider the newer and less explored area of teaching English as a global multilingual franca for transcultural communication. In intercultural communication research, communicative competence is typically expanded beyond linguistic competence to include the knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed for intercultural communication. And I have here Byram's Intercultural Communicative Competence, or ICC, in 1997, which is considered the most influential alternative to communicative competence. It was emphasized in Byram's ICC that intercultural competence is added to linguistics, sociolinguistics, and discourse competence. The ICC of Byram is divided into 5 subwoods or dimensions. Number 1, we have attitudes, which include respect, openness, curiosity, and discovery. Number 2, knowledge, which is concerned with comprehending the deep knowledge of culture as well as its specific information. Number 3, skills in interpreting and relating, or skills in interpreting an event belonging to another culture. Number 4, skills of discovery and interaction, or the ability to acquire new knowledge of a culture and cultural practices. And lastly, we have cultural awareness, or political education, or critical ability to recognize the nuances of one's own and other cultures. That's all about intercultural competence according to Byram. I have here highlights about intercultural competence. Number 1, provides an alternative to communicative competence that includes intercultural communication in a detailed manner. Number 2, its pedagogic implications have been explored in classroom studies in a wide range of settings and languages, often with very positive results. Number 3, it is not always possible to identify cultural practices as related to any specific culture, and boundaries between languages and cultures are frequently transgressed and transcended. Number 4, to prepare learners for communication in the language, then a more appropriate model and goal is a need. I also included here some alternatives to prepare learners for communication in the language anchored in intercultural competence. First, intercultural speaker with the competence of ICC rather than native speaker communicative competence. It means removing the native speaker as a model and goal and replacing with the intercultural speaker and intercultural citizen. Second, development of skills and strategies needed in intercultural interactions such as accommodation and pragmatic competence. Pragmatic competence means the ability to use language effectively in a contextually appropriate fashion. Number three, positive attitudes to difference, motivation to engage with others, and ability to decenter and relativize one's beliefs and practices. To mention scholars who have views on intercultural communication, we have here Phipps and Guilherme. They describe a critical pedagogy for intercultural education as critical use of language, a critical approach to one's own and other cultural backgrounds, and a critical view of intercultural interaction. They propose that this involves reflection, dissent, difference, dialogue, empowerment, action, and hope from both teachers and learners. Guilherme highlights the importance of reflection and critical pedagogy in which teachers and learners are given time to explore their experiences of intercultural communication and the complexity of culture and language. Liddicoat and Scarino write that an intercultural perspective implies the transformational engagement of the learner in the act of learning. Hino and Oda 2015 underscored the diverse socio-cultural context in which English is used and crucially incorporated elements of intercultural awareness. Galloway and Rose 2018 have outlined what they term a global English language teaching or GELT approach, which draws together many of the insights from ELF research relation ELT pedagogy. That's all about that section. Now let us move on to 15.3 about intercultural awareness and pedagogy. There are 5 strands in the application of ICA to teaching. Number 1, exploring the complexity of local cultures. Through an exploration of their own cultural backgrounds, students learn about the diversity and complexity of cultural groupings in their own setting. Number 2, exploring cultural representations in language learning materials. It is emphasized here that teaching materials, especially textbooks, are a central part of language teaching. Number 3, exploring cultural representations in the media and arts, both in digital and traditional mediums. The arts and media, particularly literature, have long been used in language teaching as a means of including cultural content of target cultures. Making use of cultural informants. Here we have non-local and local English teachers with experience of other cultures and intercultural communication can act as cultural informants. In more diverse classrooms, students can act as cultural informants also. Number 5, engaging in intercultural communication, both face-to-face and digitally. As with EMF awareness, experiences of both face-to-face and digital intercultural and transcultural communication through English provide valuable opportunities to put the knowledge and skills of ICA into practice and develop them further. That's all for my part. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone! The final approach we will consider in this section is intercultural citizenship. Now, what is intercultural citizenship? Sometimes referred to as global citizenship, and we will use the two terms interchangeably. Also, intercultural citizenship and global citizenship are wide approaches to education in general. It is also conceived as an extension of citizenship that goes beyond national borders and recognizes that we are globally connected in many different ways. Now, in relation to education, Intercultural citizenship should be incorporated into all subject areas so that students can better understand and be fully prepared for a globally connected world, according to the Delhi 2016. Nonetheless, the foreign language classroom is a particularly suitable setting to introduce the global or intercultural citizenship education because of the focus on other cultures, international connections, and intercultural communication, according to Byram et al. 2017. So, studies show that students often have very positive attitudes to intercultural citizenship education and developing an identity as an intercultural or global citizen. Okay, so on the other hand, for other students, particularly those with more experience of studying abroad, many of the concepts associated with intercultural citizenship were familiar. Now, how cultural citizenship education can be implemented in the classroom. So these are some of the reasons. First is intercultural citizenship should be incorporated across the university curriculum in a consistent and systematic manner according to Philic 2013. And another thing is all students, both local and international, should be required to cross socio-cultural boundaries. And another reason is that international universities should incorporate elements of intercultural education and encourage multilingual and multicultural group work across curriculum. So if teachers are expected to integrate intercultural citizenship and its relationship to language learning and use into their teaching practice, then it must be a part of teacher education too. So teacher education programs, both pre-service and in-service, need to incorporate intercultural citizenship education as a core strand in their aims and practices. That is according to Osler and Starkey 2015 and Gudili 2016. So to summarize our lesson this quarter, the process of learning and using another language and English are inevitably intercultural. And also, if ELT is to prepare learners for the use of English as a global multilingual franca for intercultural and transcultural communication, intercultural education becomes a core part of pedagogic practices. And also, current approaches within ELT are typically ad hoc and superficial with essentialist representations of national cultures and languages. So the difference between traditional ELT and more transculturally oriented ELT or transcultural ELT. So for traditional ELT, a national scale standard language ideologies with national language varieties associated with national cultural character. And for transcultural ELT, a critical approach to language, culture, and identity. Okay, another thing for traditional ELT, communicative competence with a focus on linguistic and grammatical competence. For transcultural, intercultural communicative competence or ICC and awareness or ICA. For traditional ELT, native speaker models, and for transcultural ELT, intercultural speaker and intercultural citizen as models. For traditional ELT, it focused on linguistic products such as grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. For transcultural, process of communication and adaptable use of communicative resources. That's all. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you learned something about intercultural citizenship education and global Englishes.